Okay, then. Thank you, guys. Monday is always a great day, at least after the advent of the reading sessions. Okay. So, this is the first phase of tonight's reading session, and we are going to start with Anusha's entry titled The Jester. Okay. And it was a part of Ink What You Think event, and you can see that she has written on this particular image, pretty popular amongst the participants, and let's see what her interpretation is. Faces on the floor, faces on the wall. I recognize them all. I see them as a reflection on the television screen. I see them on the glass doors in the frozen section of the grocery store. I see them on the window pane on the darkest nights, right as the thunder strikes. While I sit at the park bench and see children cycling by, I see a face I don't recognize. The children stop every once in a while, talking amongst themselves, laughing. Watching them, a heavy weight presses down my chest. They must be laughing at me. That's okay. I was made to be laughed at. I notice now that they don't seem to be looking at me. The walls around my chest continue to tighten. The children seem so happy by themselves, innocent and ignorant. I wonder what that must be like. I know this face is one I need to add to my wall. As soon as I get home, I begin my project. I start to mold the clay to my face. Oh, okay. Hello, Adarsh. Good night. Take care. Bye. As soon as I get home, I begin my project. I start to mold the clay to my face. This water and earth, it binds me to the world. My porcelain handcuffs. I try to mirror the expression I saw as best as I can. My fingers do their routine dance as I pinch and sculpt and smooth things out. It looks a little off, but it will have to do. I set it down and wait for it to dry. I hear the drumming of the rain against the window. The air is damp and cold. It'll take longer to dry out. I need to wash my face. I don't see the faces in the mirror in my bathroom. I've gotten so used to them that I don't like the sight of my own face. I rub and rub with a bar of soap. The colors on my face bleed. Lather and paint swirl around the bowl of the sink before disappearing down the drain. The sight almost looks beautiful. I look up. My face is still red and pale. I do this every day, and yet the result always disappoints me. At times, it is infuriating. I know if I scrubbed until the skin peeled off my face, the colors would still stay. I crawl into bed and try to fall asleep. Yet the thoughts in my head are louder than the rain. Jester of the court, to mend something back then. My audience would be royalty, their expressions cycling from awe to laughter and back again. Or perhaps my intentional fumbling would make children at fairs or parties laugh. The world is my court now, and it is just as tired of me as I am of myself. There is nothing to do anymore. I gave up a while ago and decided to just blend in, mold myself a face that would get lost in the crowd. I wake up hungry only to open the fridge and see nothing there. I grab my keys and decide which face to put on today. The one of the salaryman waiting for his train to get to work with circles under his eyes, or the one of the tired mother of three children that circle her like hawks while she walks home. I don't have time to grab the cheery ones today. They're always so high up on the wall. I check on the face from yesterday, still damp. The room is brighter today. Sunlight streams in through the window. It'll dry faster. I walk to the local grocery store. It's a walk I have walked countless times before. So much so that I've stopped to think or even look at the ground. A fatal mistake. Time slows down as it does in moments like this. These. Before I know it, my feet are up in the air and my head is inching closer and closer to the ground. Wow, this is really before I know it, my feet are up in the air and my head is inching closer and closer to the ground till my vision is clouded grey by the pavement. My face hits the floor. The mask falls, rolling away into the street, and in an instant, it is crushed by passing traffic. People turn, alarmed by the fall, but I see their worry melt into amusement as they turn and look at me. They gather around me. They point and laugh. They look a lot like the faces on my wall. There's a bright red flowing from my face. But this time, it's not paint. I laugh. I was made to be laughed at. This was crazy. This was really, really hard hitting, Anusha. Before reading and talking about it again, I mean, of course, we are all going to do that together, not just me. But at one point, it sort of reminded me of this one graphic novel that I had read. I'm pretty sure many of you have also read it, or maybe you guys have seen the movie based on it. I just want a raise of hands. How many of you have read or watched this movie called The Watchmen? Abhishek Bhaiya has watched it. Nobody else? Shrikar has also watched it. Anybody else? Sneha calling me sir is very weird, but okay. Yeah, we'll definitely share it, Sneha. So, apart from Shrikar and Abhishek Bhaiya, nobody has seen The Watchmen or has read The Watchmen, it seems. Okay, fine, fine, fine. So, basically, there's this line in the movie. One of the characters one of the characters will be saying this thing. Okay, it's a joke that he cracks. It is apparently a joke, and he says that a man went to the doctor one day. He said, "Doctor, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to. I'm completely depressed. I don't know what to do with my life. It's full of uncertainty. I wake up every day until I can't see a light at the end of the tunnel." And then the doctor says that, well, it's great that you came in today of all days because the great clown Poliachi is in town. and he has a show tonight, and nobody ever goes to his performances, and doesn't leave completely full of life. And the man, after hearing this, bursts into tears. And the doctor said, "Well, what's wrong?" And the man said, "The doctor, I am the great clown Pagliacci." So, this particular piece of Anusha is actually, you know, like a subtle remembrance of that particular joke cracked by an amazing character. His name is Rorschach, and he'll be cracking this joke. Nevertheless, so guys, let's dig deeper. And Anusha is here. Anusha, if it is possible for you to turn the mic on, would you like to tell us a little bit about the inspiration, if it is comfortable for you? Or you can use the chat box. Do let me know if you are using the chat box, because in that case, we can continue the discussion amongst ourselves, and then we can read what you have written. Okay, you will be typing. Okay, sweet. So, guys, let's put on our thinking hats, and if you guys can turn your mics on, it would be really great. And let's see the first paragraph where Anusha has penned down that faces on the floor, faces on the wall, I recognize them all. I see them as a reflection on the television screen. I see them on the glass doors in the frozen section of the grocery store. I see them on the window pane on the darkest nights, right as the thunder strikes, right? So it is very clear that, and I mean, Anusha, she's talking about, and I'm taking it as a first person narrative, right? So she is definitely talking about herself, right? She sees her own reflection on the television screen. She sees her own reflection on the glass of the frozen section of the grocery store, and on the window pane on the darkest nights, right as the thunder strikes, right? So that last line definitely invokes a little bit of theatricality, and a little bit of theatricality never hurts, right? So clearly, she is seeing herself. She is witnessing her own reflection, but she says she refers to them as faces, right? And it is a clear indication that we, as human beings, although we are a single individual, each one of us is a single individual, we have different phases in our personality, right? I think this is a very good indication she has given at the start, that she is indeed talking about our different phases, our different faces, and our different personalities. Would anyone like to add anything about this particular paragraph? Feel free to turn your mic on.
Yeah, actually, I agree with you, but to some extent, I personally believe it means something else. For me, faces on the floor or faces on the wall, I recognize them all. I see them on television screens and so on. I believe that she herself is taking her as a clown who has a mask on, and as the clown performs for people, they are actually able to see multiple faces that are sitting in the audience. They are able to, recognize them. But same couldn't be said for the audience. The audience just sees a mask of the clown. They cannot recognize the person behind the mask, right? I personally believe that she's saying that whenever she removes the marks, she goes out and sees those people that were their audience, but they don't recognize her, right? She sees them in the grocery stores, on the, as she says, in the window pane on the darkest night, right as the thunder strikes. Okay, I personally believe that she means that. Like, that is my personal interpretation. It could be different, but that what I got when I read.
That is indeed a very intriguing point. So Aviral is saying that while doing her daily mundane thing, work, right, looking at the television, or going to the grocery shop, she's actually, she has to put on a performance because she is so drained, so exhausted. But yet she's doing all things, and all those things, and her doing those things is akin to a performance. And as Aviral rightly mentioned, and I sort of second what Aviral said, that she is actually putting on a performance. She doesn't have the energy to do it, but she has to. She has to. show a different face to each and every environment she is visiting. So that is indeed a good point, Aviral. Anybody else who would like to add to what Aviral said, or a new point maybe? Anusha has written something in the chat box. We'll go to that thing at last, okay? Because that is her thing. Anyone else? Please feel free to use the chat box, okay? If you are not comfortable turning the mic on. Aviral, that's indeed a very good point. Um, Anybody else? Okay, fine, no problem. So, after establishing the fact that, she has to put on a performance at every place, she says that while I sit at the park bench, sorry, while I sit at the park bench and see children cycling by, I see a face I don't recognize. The children stop every once in a while, talking amongst themselves, laughing. Watching them, a heavy weight presses down on my chest. They must be laughing at me. I don't know how many of you have this issue, the issue of anxiety. I have gone through it. I still have it. No shame in that. Many a times, especially when I was younger, I was very scared of public places. And because, although it might not be true, but I used to think that people are probably pointing at me and making faces or talking about me, not in a good way. It was not an attention seeking mentality. Rather, it was like, am I being a laughing stock? Right? Am I making a fool out of myself just by being there? Okay, and that was partly because of I was a chonky kid. I was a chubby kid, right? So it is all fun and games when you're around your loved ones, but at places where there are a lot of people, I was probably not the most active kid, and that had made me the butt of many jokes, and that sort of instilled a sense of insecurity and anxiety. So that is there. Sneha has said that I'm still scared of public places, especially crowds. So this is, yeah, I'm also scared of crowd, but now my reason is a little bit different. I'm afraid of stampedes and bomb blasts. But nevertheless, guys, have you ever been, the victim of anxiety? Have you been highly anxious?
For me, like multiple times, but the earliest event I could recognize was like that I could remember. I was just 5 or 6 years old at the dentist's, and my appointment was very late. As in, like my token number was late, and my parents were with me, and I saw all the patients leave the place, and we were the only ones left in the hospital. And I don't know why that made me super anxious. I was crying. I was fearing that they will abandon me, and you know something like that. So I still have those issues even now as a grown up, and that's the earliest event I could think of. I got consoled with a soft toy by the doctor. He was very kind, but that didn't help. Until the next day I was still afraid. I was holding my mom, like, don't leave me, something like that. But yeah, anxiety still hits me. It's still I don't worry about crowded places or something like that, but I get anxious when I feel that I'm the most I'm just alone and there's no one around me. It's the opposite of crowds. So yeah.
That is indeed another situation when one might be anxious. And as Tanvi mentioned that it was there during her childhood, and it is still there. It is still lurking around, right? And that is what happens, right? Old habits are hard to kill, and so are old, I don't know, fears. There's this beautiful poem by Alan Moore, and yeah, Alan Moore is also the writer of The Watchmen. I was talking about The Watchmen, and the poem is "Old Gangsters Never Die." Okay, I had shared it once long back in the group. If not, if you guys were not present back then, I will share it again tonight after the session. Or if you are, cool enough, you can go to YouTube and search it. Okay, the name is "Old Gangsters Never Die," written by Alan Moore. Abhishek Bhaiya, please go ahead.
Yeah, you had shared this actually. I was in that meeting.
Right, right, absolutely. So since Tanvi mentioned that, old fears, the fears from childhood, they, more often than not, they tend to stay, right? And just like old gangsters are, you know, they never die. So do listen to that poem. It is amazing. It is amazing. Anyone else who would like to add to the anxiety wala point that Tanvi made really beautifully, and Sneha also. Anusha has, okay, let's read a little bit what Anusha has written. So for Anusha, the image was inspiring enough. And if I'm being honest, I was trying to make a character that is disjointed from society. Someone that is lost and trying to fit in by molding themselves. That is indeed a very strong emotion, and that actually comes up in a very refined way in your piece. And then Anusha has agreed to what Aviral has said, and Aviral did make a good point. Okay, and then Sneha talks about her anxiety of crowded in crowded places, and then Anusha says this bit was sort of holding a mirror to my anxiety as well. I have terrible anxiety. Satyaki, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, definitely, definitely, Anusha. Mental health is indeed hard to talk about, but it's like, it's like defeating it from the fabled book by Stephen King. You have to acknowledge and you have to be vocal about it. Prakash has probably left. Okay, his phone got discharged. I hope he has a good night's sleep. Nevertheless, anybody else who would like to share their part of the anxiety story, or we can move ahead? Nobody. Okay, fine. I notice now that they don't seem to be looking at me. The walls around my chest continue to tighten. The children seem so happy by themselves, innocent and ignorant. I wonder what that must be like. I know this face is one I need to add to my wall. So she is actually in awe after she realizes that those children are not laughing at her. They are just laughing amongst themselves, right? They're just playing. They're innocent and ignorant. They don't care about what is happening in the world. And that is something that she is craving for. She is so disturbed by the inputs and the scrutiny of the world that she has lost not only her innocence but her ignorance as well. And there's a saying, right? Ignorance is bliss. And you don't have to be ignorant at every point, but at certain things you can be ignorant and one should be ignorant, right? So she wants that mask. She wants that mask that represents innocence and ignorance. As soon as I get home, I begin my project. I start to mold the clay to my face. She goes back home and then she tries to make a new persona for herself. This water and earth that binds me to the world. She is part of this world, but her existence itself is a product of water and earth, because she's talking about clay, right? And that is how you make it. My porcelain handcuffs, this is something that I couldn't understand. I mean, this is definitely a metaphor for something. Porcelain, I know what porcelain is, but why porcelain? Because it has like pores in it. What could be the reason of calling those why those handcuffs are made up of porcelain? It would be really great if you could point that out, Anusha. I try to mirror the expression I saw as best as I can. She's trying to, mimic the innocence and the ignorant. The ignorance. My fingers do their routine dance as I pinch and sculpt and smooth things out. That is how masks are made, right? It looks like it looks a little off, but it will have to do. No matter, porcelain is essentially fired clay. Oh, okay, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That makes sense. That makes sense. It looks a little off, but it will have to do. She's trying her best, and even if the outcome is not optimum or optimal, she has to use it anyhow. I set it down and wait for it to dry. I hear the drumming of the rain against the window. The air is damp and cold. It will take longer to dry out. I need to wash my face. I don't see the faces. I mean, that is self evident, right? She has tried to make a mask that mimics innocence and ignorance, right? Now she's waiting for it to dry, and this is not easy for her because the environment around her is damp and cold, and it is going to take a lot of time to dry out. And once it gets dried up, then only she'll be able to uh, put it on. I don't see the faces in the mirror in my bathroom. I've gotten so used to them that I don't like the sight of my own face. I rub and rub with a bar of soap. The colors on my face bleed. Lather and paint swirl around the bowl of the sink before disappearing down the drain. So she has put on so many masks, so many personas find home in her that her own personality has lost its way. Her own personality cannot come back home. The sight almost looks beautiful. She doesn't like her own face anymore. I look up, and this is a very good point about acceptance, right? Many a times we tend to, vilify ourselves. कि हम ऐसे क्यों हैं? Why am I like this? Right? This is something that again is definitely we something that we all have gone through, we all are going through, and we all are going to go through in one way or the other, right? Self-hatred is a relevant problem. It has always been a relevant problem, right? And I'm not talking about calling yourself a fool just because something happened. Self-hatred is chronicle, it is perennial, it stays, it doesn't go, it latches onto yourself like a leech, and it keeps on sucking your life force. I look up, my face is still red and pale. I do this every day, and yet the result always disappoints. At times it's infuriating. I know if I scrubbed until the skin peeled off my face, the colors would still stay. I crawl into the bed and try to fall asleep, yet the thoughts in my head are louder than the rain. And again, I think Anusha has made it very clear in this particular line. There are no, there's no sugar coating, there is no encasing that is beautiful or metaphorical. She is being real over here. She crawls into her bed, and the voices are louder in her head, right? And we all know there's no need to elaborate on this particular point. We all have the voices in our head, right? They're always trying to vex us, they're always trying to vilify us, put us down. Sometimes they tend to uplift us as well, but in this particular piece, I'm pretty sure they are not doing that. So again, this also is a sign of self doubt, right? Perennial self doubt. It is chronic. It is it is not momentarily. I mean, it is not something that is instantaneous. My audience would be Roy. Okay, so gesture of court. She says gesture of court. It meant something back then. My audience would be royalty. Their expressions cycling from awe to laughter and back again. Or perhaps my intentional fumbling would make children at fairs or parties laugh. The world is my court now, and it is just as tired of me as I am of myself. So she's tired of pretending. There was a time when, pretending was fun because she received validation. As we all saw, that she was putting shows for different people in different environment, she was putting forward different personas of herself. But she's tired of it. And the world is tired of it because probably, they can see through it. There's nothing to do anymore. I gave up a while ago and decided to just blend in, mold myself a face that would get lost in the crowd. But now she has given up. But now she has given up, and she has not only given up on pretending, she has given up on herself as well. She's just looking for that one mask which will help us to blend in rather than setting her aside from the crowd. I wake up hungry only to open the fridge and see nothing there. I grab my keys and decide which face to put on today. The one of the salaryman waiting for his train to get work. That would be, I guess, get to work probably. With circles under his eyes. Or the one of the tired mother of three children that circle her like hawks while she walks home. And that is a, I'm not sure how intentional it was, but this particular point is very, very, very important. Okay, because yes, we all worship the concept of motherhood, right? We all love our mothers. That is there. That is there. Okay, we won't be here without our mothers. But if you look from the perspective of our mothers as a woman or as an individual, not only birthing a child, but you know, taking care of kids to sustain them, that sucks them dry, right? So this is aptly written that one of the two of the tired mother of three children that circle her like hawks while she walks home, right? And that is why we owe her. That is why we owe our mothers. I don't have time to grab the cheery ones today. And although Anusha has written that that the narrator doesn't have the time to grab the cheery masks today, but I think it's not just about time, it is also about strength. They're always so high up on the wall, and the second line proves that the cheery ones are high at the wall. That means it takes a lot of effort to put the cheery ones. It is easy to put on the morose ones. I check on the face from yesterday. It's still damp. That innocent and ignorant swallow face, it has still not dried up. How could it? Because the environment itself is damp and dry. The environment itself is filled to the brim with sorrow. The room is brighter today. Sunlight streams in through the window. It will die faster. So there's a little ray of hope. She says that there is some sort of sunlight. The sunbeams are passing through the window. It reminds me of this song called "Jesus Don't Want Me." Jesus don't want me to. Jesus don't want me. Yeah, Jesus don't want me for a sunbeam. Okay, the song was originally written by a band called the Vaselines, and then it was performed by Kurt Cobain, the legendary frontman of Nirvana. If you guys have not heard the song, you should hear both of them. The original one by Vaselines and the cover, the MTV Coke Studio cover by Kurt Cobain as well. The song is titled "Jesus Don't Want Me for a Sunbeam." Okay, and you will know what I'm talking about. I walked to the local grocery store. It's a walk. I have walked countless times before. So again, she tries to indulge herself in the mundane task of living day by day. So much so that I have stopped to think or even look at the ground. A fatal mistake. Time slows down as it does in moments like these. Before I know it, my feet are up in the air and my head is inching closer and closer to the ground till my vision is clouded gray by the pavement. So in the last, I'm not again going through the last paragraph, but if you remember it, and if you know by the introduction of the last paragraph that the narrator, they die by the end. And the point is that the point of the whole piece, that according to me, is that this person lived a life which was not for themselves. They pretended and they pretended again and again at various points, so much so that they forgot their own self, and eventually they became tired and tried to just mingle in as a nobody. But it was so draining, it was so exhausting, and the idea was so preposterous that at the end everything was taken from her, even her life. So the point is that one day they died, and the death is something that at the in her last moments, you can see there's this line: "There's a bright red flowing from my face, but this time it's not pain. I laugh. I was made to be laughed at." So she dies, and I mean, looking at the blood, there is some sort of a relief, probably, But then the last line again reminds us a very, very sad truth that, you know, that even in during her last second, she acknowledges herself as someone who was made to be laughed at. Maybe it is death, or maybe it is, she fell down, and, it was some sort of an accident. But I would take it as death, and even at death, she could not think of herself as something better or someone better. So this poem actually talks about, not a poem, but this piece actually talks about, how many of us uh, have shelled ourselves so much that the animal inside the shell is gone. It's just layers of shell, and we are just changing shells here and there. And I think this is something which has become an epidemic in today's generation. And when I say today's generation, I'm talking about Gen Z. Nevertheless, people, please pour in your inputs. Anusha has done a
Actually,
wonderful
I,
job. Yeah,
I
tell me.
might like get into a very long rant because this poem just hits home. I mean, I
Absolutely.
can't tell how good this poem is written. I mean, poem or it's a something, I don't know what to call it, but like it's just so well written. The metaphors, the way she compares things, the way she's written it, it's just absolutely like phenomenal. I'm impressed. Like so far, like this is the poem that really touched somewhere deep for me. So the thing is, like for me, sometimes my interpretation might differ from the poet's intention, but for me, this is like psychologically something which I go through. Like might there are people who grow up with narcissistic parents. Sometimes that could result in certain wounds which don't heal throughout their childhood or adulthood. It's like a forever scar, and it alters your brain chemistry in some ways, and you just get into a habit of people pleasing. Like my experience is that, like, you people please from very on early on in your life, right? You don't even remember when it started, like for me. So you fear abandonment and you try your best to just fit in, perhaps, because you never, I mean, for me, I'm just talking about myself here and the poem, how I related to it, is that you never really fit in. And people would laugh at you if they really know what's underneath, right? So I'm made to be laughed at. That's me. And they just laugh along because, well, that's the point, right? So then that's how it felt like the end. So it's like you just do everything and anything possible to just be a part of what you're surrounded by. So you no longer recognize what's within. You don't know what's within. You don't really know what's within, and it's just become a part of you. So you can scrub it how much ever you want, and your face might get pale. You might do all that you can, but it never goes off because it's become a part of you. So you don't really know what you are anymore. That's how deep it runs. And yeah, I mean, that's why people laugh at you. Those masks that you put on, those are the masks which resemble the people that you've been with. So those people who are laughing at you, that's the same mask that you've been putting on. Like you might also have laughed at people when you were in such a situation to just fit in, just you it's like mind confounding stuff that's written here, and that's very true. That's exactly what I go through every single day even right now. But yeah, that's I'm really happy to see someone talking about it and putting it out there. I really appreciate it, Anusha. This is like so good. And I really wish you could post it out there somewhere for people to read in case you're comfortable with it. But I really love it, and I'm really thankful for having a read at something like this, that I'm not just the only one. So yeah, thank you for this, really.
That was indeed a very good point. I think Tanvi has made a very great point that although we were, as of now, we were considering the narrator as someone who is a victim, right? A victim of circumstances, a victim of their own mind. But Tanvi actually ended up putting the spotlight on the fact that just as the narrator is a victim, there are other victims out there, and we have been the people who have laughed at them, right? So, no, everybody has their hands dirty. So, that's definitely a great point made by Tanvi. And indeed, Tanvi, this is one of the best poems that well, I shouldn't call it a poem. It is one of the best write ups that I have seen in any of the Sahityika events, okay? And as you mentioned, this thing is definitely going on Instagram, on our Instagram page, because Anusha's entry has received a lot of applause. Okay, and as I mentioned, uh, hello every victim who got spotlighted. Hello, hello, Abhineet. You guys have a little. Oh no, no, Anusha, this is an amazing piece, and everyone who's here is here to read what you have written, and you can see that even Litesh has mentioned the same. Varchasva has mentioned the same. I remember once we were done reading, Berlin had said the same. Sneha had said the same, right? And Sneha has said that isn't it the story of everybody's life? People live their whole life according to the rules set by the society, forgetting their own selves, desires, and everything. There are so many examples for this, and then when those people are on the deathbed, they rewind their life regretting all those moments. They could make a decision for themselves, but they didn't and choose other options to go with the societal rules. Those decisions can be of their own life or someone else's, but it does happen. Absolutely, 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 Sneha. I think none of us are safe from molding a mask or two for ourselves. Shadow has agreed to this. Shadow has said so true. By the way, those who are new here, Shadow is Balaji, Okti is Shrikar.
Yeah, also, I just wanted to add one more thing that you said
Please.
Gen Z is a victim of this, right? So, why? I mean, it's not like you eulogizing the past, like it's
Mm.
glorious and that we have a doomsday view of the future. But to be honest, that's how it's happening. Like that's how the system is going forward. You're becoming more and more individualistic. So life out there is a hustle, and you actually need to hustle to survive. And there's no other way out. There's no way you can be average. Being average is not livable anymore. You can't live if you're average. That's how societal expectations are right now. Back then, was it any different? Well, from anecdotal, people who have lived longer than us, who are alive along with us, or who passed away recently, like people who we have interacted with, they've actually gone through the process of this change, like in the past century, of how societal standards and impact. It's actually driving home one thing, that you just get more fucked up with time. Of course, wartime was responsible for a lot of casualty, lot of issues, but then there was something called a community. You had something there. I'm pretty sure, even, I mean, throughout human history we've been dealing with mental health issues, but then internet led us to stay in our homes. It was a good thing, but then we're just staying at home. We're not having direct person to person interaction, which is reducing day by day. Back then, that was a thing. Like, if you have to talk to someone, you talk to them in person. You don't have any other way. Maybe you'll write letters, and those were really special. So things really meant something. Nowadays it's like overstimulation. Things don't really matter. Like, you don't really know whether it holds that meaning for the other person as does to you. So you don't really know whether things have meaning or things are special, or you are actually having that connection, feeling bonded with people. That doesn't exist. So that's why it's individualistic. You don't have people, you don't have a community, so you feel all alone. And that's one of the reasons, like, you have to drive yourself, and you don't have someone to have your back. You can't lean on anybody, not even your parents. That's why we're feeling so alone. That's why we put on masks. That's why we're trying our best to please people, to just live. I guess we can't escape from that now. Our generation is doomed, in a way. But yeah, I mean, there are probably ways out of this, but uh, that would be too long of a talk. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
Another gem of a point made by Tanvi. Please, I think Abhishek Bhaiya has turned his mic on. Yeah, Bhaiya, please go ahead.
Yeah. Why are you saying that your generation is doomed? Why are you saying that? You have raised valid points. No doubt you have raised valid points. But the last line that your generation is doomed, I mean, it's a bit far fetched. Every decade or so, we are saying that the next generation is doomed, right from the inception of man. But yet, here we are surviving. Why are you saying that our generation is doomed? My
Well, yeah, you
perspective,
are right. You are right.
yeah. So yes, your my generation, your generation, it's all relative. The fact, the points presented in this piece, the Jester, I believe that they are quintessential in a way. We are feeling more isolated, it's true, uh, in today's perspective or in today's society, but the feeling of isolation or feeling of uh, masks being forced on us, I think this kind of feeling is uh, in existence for a long time. Uh,
Yeah,
and
that I definitely agree on.
yes, and I have a also I would like to present my perspective on this, that we are discussing that society makes us wear the masks, but sometimes even the fate even the fate makes us wear the masks. It all started with our survival mechanism. Sometimes some great unspeakable tragedy or some great unspeakable bare truth happens, which is too much truthful to digest. And then we are bound to create this facade to give some kind of meaning to all this. Of course, that thing has devolved into this, but yes, it all started with a noble purpose, survival. My take is only this. That's it.
So Abhishek Bhaiya has also made a great point after Tanvi had presented some really good views. Abhishek Bhaiya made a great point, and his point is definitely amongst all the points that we made today. His point seems to be the most optimistic one, and this reminds me of this one line from this legendary movie, Jurassic Park. Not just the movie, the novel as well by the late Michael Crichton. If you guys read it, if you guys have seen it, there's one line when they are having lunch, and I think this is the most beautiful. I'm going a little bit off rails, but it will come back to what Abhishek Bhaiya said. There's this scene in Jurassic Park where they are having lunch, okay, and it is prior to all the commotion. And when we were kids, we were only fans of the chase scenes, right? The T-Rex coming and the Velociraptors ripping people apart. But when you grow up and you watch Jurassic Park or read Jurassic Park, you'll see that the human interaction in Jurassic Park is really intriguing. And there's this character called Dr. Ian Malcolm, and he's against this whole park wala situation. He doesn't want dinosaurs to be, recreated. And he says that, and the owner of the park, John Hammond, is like, this is a controlled environment. Everything is controlled. Nothing will leave our notice, and everything is controlled. No accidents are going to happen. And he also says that, all the animals in the park are female, so there is no male to impregnate them. So the population is also under control. But Ian Malcolm says that life finds a way, and that is what happens. If you read the book, you'll see that the DNA they had used some African frogs DNA, and those frogs have the ability to change their something is there. I'm not a biology student, but there is some sort of a transformation from female to male, and that is how the dinosaurs end up reproducing more than the park owners speculated. And but this line, that life finds a way, this is really true regarding what Abhishek Bhaiya said, that this thing, this point that Anusha has written in her piece, that Tanvi has put forward, that we all have been talking about. This is not, something that is happening today. This has been happening for the longest time now. The only difference is that it is being talked about in today's day and age, right? But as Abhishek Bhaiya said, that we have survived, we will survive, And as Ian Malcolm said, life finds a way. Again, before wrapping up this phase of the reading session, uh, I would just like to add to what Abhishek Bhai and Tanvi said. There are some people who tend to use the jester situation as a coping mechanism, right? There are people who tend to be beaten down by the community or by the world in becoming the jester. But there's a third party, and I just want to talk about the third party before wrapping up. This third party consists of pretentious people, people who want to look cool, people who think that depression is cool, who think that anxiety is cool, who think that the burden of a genius is cool. I have seen people who don't take bath, who don't cut their hair because they want to represent themselves as some eccentric genius. But I don't think that is the sign of a genius, right? They can't put a candle to the book, but they don't want to take a shower, because apparently, quote unquote, that is the sign of genius. There are people who would try to be rude and be pessimistic about everything, and they will say that oh no, I'm brutally honest. This term is something that is being used nowadays, brutally honest. Okay, honesty doesn't have anything to do with brutality. Okay, it's just a bunch of assholes. But the point is that there are people out there who are pretending to be victims, who are pretending to be diseased, who are pretending to have mental health problems just because they think it is cool. But the problem is, there are two problems. One, the first problem is that we cannot differentiate these people from the ones who really need help. And the second and the more scary problem is that often when you start pretending, it starts growing on you. And eventually, you actually go down that way. I have known people who started smoking just because they wanted to look cool. But when I look at them today, they are not able to give up. I know people who just pretended to be depressed. And that pretentiousness ended up, you know, creating such a void for them that they have nobody around them, and they ended up being alone, and they're for real depressed. And if you guys are I would just like to end this session by this one thing that you guys would be knowing if you are a fan of Batman, or if you have read Nietzsche's work. Because Nietzsche says that beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. For when you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you. Having said that, beautiful, beautiful write up, Anusha. Thank you very much for this submission. Thank you for presenting us with your thought. And this phase of the reading session was amazing. So many viewpoints in the chat box, so many viewpoints were presented after turning the mic on, right? And I see that Anusha has written that that's true about constantly hustling for success. This is after Tanvi's statement. I think that's reflected in the increasing numbers of grades in competitive exams and consolidation of that kind of toxic culture of education today. And of course, that is indeed a part of it, not a tangent, but definitely a part of it. Then Anusha has also said that, I may have written this in negative light as an allegory for our issues and mental health, but I hope at the end of the day, the feeling you take home is there is always hope. Indeed, like Satyaki quoted, yeah, indeed, guys. Life finds a way, people. I know we all are we all have undergone trauma in one way or the other, and we all have our fair share of problem, but then again we are still here, and we have still much to do. So let's just hope that we can climb high and find those cheery masks, if we at all have to use masks, right? Varchesva has written also, it's my first session here. Let me tell you all, it's amazing. I'm glad you liked it, Varchesva. This is, although the session is still left. I mean, we are only done with the ink, what you think part of it. Now we are going to start with Salem's Lot. And Anusha said, thank you so much, everyone, for reading this, and I'll, I have loved all your opinions. Thank you, Anusha. Thank you for gifting us with such a beautiful piece. So here ends the first phase of reading session. For Ink What You Think, I'll be stopping the recording now and then starting a new recording for Salem slot. Okay. Tanvi has also mentioned that also that pretending part you mentioned, it is in the itself a separate mental health issue. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Therapy is a, you know, it's a must